Welcome to next episode of Unproduced. We are in episode number 3, and if you are listening, as always, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. This time, I want to look at the problem with chasing more. The core idea of this episode is that the problem isn't ambition. The problem is that more is a moving target. Yes, if you listen to previous episode, you probably know where I'm coming from, because briefly we discussed it before. But I think that's very important topic, not only for myself, but honestly, I'm pretty sure that if you think about it, you find it very relatable as well. Many of the things I once wanted became normal surprisingly quickly. And that's made me question what I'm actually chasing. Now, I guess that you see what I'm talking about. Recently, I've been thinking about something strange. A lot of the things I once wanted are now completely normal. Things that felt exciting, things that felt impossible, or the things that I thought would change everything. Now, look at some kind of example from your own journey. You are thinking, wow, when I reach this, things are going to change. When I achieve it, it's going to make a difference. When, for example, I reach certain number of followers, it's going to be huge, influential, popular, this and that. I'm going to change, blah blah. You know what I'm talking about. And yet, today, they feel quite ordinary. Not because they are not valuable, not even because I would be ungrateful, but because humans adapt. I always try to remind myself that I'm grateful for the things that I have, I achieved, I need to go through, because, as you know, everyone comes from different circumstances, varied backgrounds, everyone is facing different conditions, obstacles, and simply has different opportunities. So it brings me to one of the commonly discussed topics or themes of comparison. If you haven't listened to previous episode, make sure to check it out. As I said, humans adapt very quickly. And that's made me question something. How much of my life am I spending chasing the next thing? And how much time am I spending appreciating what I've already built? Because I don't think that ambition is the problem. I think the problem is that more keeps moving. Every time we get closer to it, it moves again. And recently, I've been wondering whether that's helping me or hurting me. We can look at the example of social media, LinkedIn, or even podcast. When I reach 1k followers, you reach it, and then when I reach 5k, again, you reach it, when I reach 10k, and you know where I'm coming with this. Again, I said that in the previous episode, and I still remember when I started on LinkedIn. I even remember some of the voices, some of the people that I followed, and they were ahead of me. I was obviously 0 or few hundred followers, which were just the friends or people that I connected with. And people ahead of me had, for example, 3k, 5k. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's a huge following, actually. And as I kept turning up, I reached it as well. Right now, I'm way over it. And did anything change? Well, yes, because there's more people in your network, probably some kind of credibility, authority, expertise, etc. But did it change my life in any big way? Well, I'm still a regular person, so not really, to be honest. Of course, it gives you all kinds of experience. You met many amazing people. It gave you opportunities and everything, but it's not as groundbreaking as people think. That's example of LinkedIn and followers, but can be same in sports. My favorite sport that I always discuss is jiu-jitsu, or any other sport that you do, or hobbies, any kind of activities, business, and other stuff. So think about it. I leave it with you for this episode. Moving on, what would younger me think? This is a question I come back to quite often. What would 18-year-old Thomas think about my life today? It is very interesting question because I would have no idea that what's going to happen. Of course, I had some kind of plan, ambitions, goals, but it turned out very differently. It was 18 years, but what about 20-year-old Thomas? Honestly, I don't think it makes such a big difference. But anyway, would he be impressed? Would he be excited? Would he think that I made it? Let's look at a few potential examples. Running produced by, starting second podcast, speaking with founders, creators, entrepreneurs, building creative projects, working for myself, training consistently, or having freedom over my schedule. The strange thing is that the younger me would probably be excited about many of these things. Current me often takes them for granted, not because they aren't meaningful, but because they've become normal. And I think that's one of the strangest parts of life. The things we desperately want often become invisible once we have them. Now, a little exercise for you. I mentioned a few potential examples from my own journey before. Of course, those were pretty much highlights or interesting things that are worth sharing, but behind the scenes there's much more. All kinds of failures, long journeys, showing up with little to no results. But you know what this is. We discussed it before, and it's one of the recurring topics in Produced by as well. Back to the question that I mentioned before. Of course, everyone is in different part of their journeys, different conditions, circumstances, etc. But think about your age now, and for example, think about 10 years back, or maybe 5 years, maybe even 3 years. And looking at your journey now, would your older yourself be impressed, excited? Would he or she think that you made it? I think we may also think that we haven't achieved as much, or that, I hope not, but some people might think that they are failures. One never knows. Again, I hope not, but one never knows. But now, think about a few examples of achievements, projects, maybe businesses, profiles, I don't know, about what you achieved. So how would your old yourself think about it? About those achievements, about what you've made? Let that sink in for a moment and think about it, like I did just before. I genuinely hope that you'll see that you achieved quite a lot and you can be proud of yourself. At the same time, I hope that it inspires you and motivates you, maybe to achieve even more. And to remind you, don't forget to enjoy the journey. Now, let's think about the goals that you've already achieved. I touched on it briefly before, but podcasting is a good example. There was a time when publishing one episode felt intimidating. Honestly, that first one was the scariest. I still remember overthinking, like how to record it, what kind of software, what kind of hardware, what's the frequency going to be for me, how to do the description, title, length, how to do the conversation, this, that, what are people going to think? I'm sure that you can relate when posting very first post on LinkedIn or other platform, which is quite funny, and I genuinely hope that you've made that first step. There are still probably people out there who are afraid of making that first step, but I hope that you are past that. And if not, I hope this inspires you. What's funny that this is episode number 3 of Unproduced, and when working on episode number 1, I almost went through the same process. I somehow got the idea, but I thought, come on, don't overthink it like before. Don't go through it again. You've got some experience, so try to avoid it. And honestly, I think it's natural that slightly I did, but I tried to prevent it and it was fairly quick. And I enjoyed it. Anyway, coming back to Produced By. It was intimidating to publish episode number 1, but then getting guests felt exciting. Getting listeners, though, felt quite impossible. And that's the reality of podcasting, that people probably don't realize, or I think it's some kind of myth. Of course, if you are someone with a huge following, famous person, someone successful, you already have the following, the name, so it's going to be easier. If you're in such situation, good for you, and I'm happy for you. But not everyone is, and definitely it wasn't me. So then those things happen, and after a while they become expectations. The same thing happens in business, in fitness, in life. But here I've got a reflection. Some of the things that once I dreamed about now feel like a routine. And that's not because the achievement wasn't meaningful. It's because the finish line simply moved. The milestone became the baseline. And suddenly, I was chasing something else. Coming back to LinkedIn, it can be milestone of followers. With the podcast, it can be milestone of listeners, of number of guests, or maybe even a dream guest. With the sport, you may achieve certain milestones such as how much you run, how many games you play, or how much you lift. I think it can be pretty much anywhere. So think about your specific situation, whether it's social media, sports, business, or other activity, and think about this. One thing I've noticed is that achievement solves one problem and creates another, which is quite funny, isn't it? The first problem is getting what you want. The second is figuring out why it still doesn't feel like enough. You hit one target, then another appears. You reach one mountain, then you notice bigger one behind it. Few examples: subscribers, downloads, business growth, training goals, creative milestones. And I could continue. Again, I'm pretty sure that while listening to this, some of the ideas came to your mind. So let's look at some questions. How many times have I said, if I can just get there? And how many times did there immediately become somewhere else? Maybe the problem isn't that we're ambitious. Maybe it's that we're expecting arrival. And maybe arrival doesn't exist. I think it is perfectly ties to one of my favorite mantras, something I always try to keep in mind, share as some kind of advice, but when sharing it, actually it reminds me that I may know it, but I might not be always following that. Do you know what's that advice? I'm pretty sure that by now you do. And it is, yes, enjoy the journey and have fun. Because even if we are chasing those milestones, those new mountains, those, I don't know, higher numbers or whatever. I think if we are fun along the way, if we enjoy it, and if we make memories, it just makes it much more meaningful and fulfilling. Perfect example, recording this podcast. Now I'm at the episode number 3. Who knows if I continue and make it past 10 episodes, 20, 50, who knows? Maybe I won't. Maybe something gets in the way. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe for whatever reason I have to stop. Of course, I hope not. Let's see. But if I enjoy it, which genuinely now, as I'm recording this, I do, and I hope that it's same on your side with listening, and not only it's enjoyable, but also meaningful. Such as for myself, I'm not only creative, I enjoy it, but I genuinely do hope that it's also positively going to impact someone and help them. So I think as long as it, let's say, ticks these boxes, then it's effort and time well spent. Now, I don't want this episode to become anti-ambition. It's good to be ambitious. It's great to be ambitious. Don't get me wrong. Because ambition has improved my life in countless ways. Without ambition, I wouldn't have started Produced By. I wouldn't have started Unproduced. I wouldn't have met any of the people I've met. I wouldn't have pushed myself to grow. Ambition creates opportunity. Ambition creates momentum. Ambition creates possibility. The issue isn't ambition. The issue is unconscious ambition. Chasing things without ever stopping to ask why. Chasing things because they're just next, not because they matter. Again, great reminder of comparison that was discussed in episode number 2. So, what is it that I am delaying? This is something that I've been questioning recently. What am I postponing until I achieve something? What am I actually waiting for? What does future Thomas get that current Thomas doesn't? For example, satisfaction, enjoyment, rest, presents, hobbies, relationships. Sometimes I think we create an invisible deal with ourselves. I know this is going to sound philosophical, but hear me out. Once I achieve X, then I'll relax. Don't worry, I'm not going to start to rap here. It was a coincidence. Then I'll enjoy life. Then I'll feel successful. Then I'll be happy. But what if that moment never arrives? What if the target simply moves again? Isn't it a bit sad? It becomes kind of never-ending loop, never-ending chase. Trying to get somewhere while the target is constantly moving at the same time. Talking about this makes me think about my current goals, ambitions, and what I'm working on. And I hope it works in the same way for you. Of course, in a positive way. Let's do the health reality check. One reason I've been thinking about recently is health. Coming back to episode number 1, I mentioned the ankle injury, which gave me some kind of perspective. Nothing dramatic, but enough to remind me how quickly priorities can change. Here's an interesting question. If somebody offered me double the downloads, double the subscribers, double the revenue, but worse health, would I take it? Probably not. Most people wouldn't. Yet, sometimes our behavior suggests otherwise. Health is one of those things we rarely appreciate until something goes wrong. And when something goes wrong, your priorities suddenly become very clear. And believe me, I think that Jiu-Jitsu is one of the best examples or one of the best reminders for this. Pretty much every time or every day you train, you can be seconds from some crazy injuries. Of course, you need to know what you are doing, what's your level, what's your experience like. You need to trust your partner and the condition that you're currently in, because of course it's always different. And you can be literally seconds from devastating injuries. Now, I'm not saying that it's only in jiu-jitsu, it's in other sports as well, of course, but just looking at my own example and share with you a bit of context. And since it happened, it's been a few weeks by now, I can still feel it. Fortunately, it's much better, but believe me, it was a priceless reminder not to take it for granted. Of course, appreciate it and protect it at all costs. I know it sounds obvious and it's like your and it's like your parents speaking with you, but believe me, health is the most important. So now, what I'm actually chasing? This is the question I've been asking myself. If I strip away numbers and milestones, what do I actually want? Not what sounds impressive, not what social media rewards. Yes, LinkedIn included. But what do I genuinely want? Possible reflections. It can be meaningful work, good health, freedom, strong relationships, creativity, interesting conversations, continued growth, and much more. Maybe the goal isn't less ambition. Maybe the goal is becoming more intentional about what ambition serves. Because if I'm going to spend years chasing something, I'd like it to matter. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one. Let's try to wrap this up. I don't think I'll ever stop wanting more. And, and honestly, I don't think I should. Ambition has given me too many good things. But I'm becoming more aware of the difference between chasing something meaningful and chasing something simply because it's next. Because maybe the goal isn't to stop climbing. Maybe the goal is to occasionally stop and appreciate how far you've already come. So, I'll leave you with one question. How much of your life are you postponing until the next milestone? Thank you for listening.